Good morning, everybody. Welcome on in. So let's go ahead and check, make sure audio hopefully sounds the same. If you haven't noticed, the layout of this stream is in the middle of changing. I've got something in the back there. You can see it's the desk that I have been streaming on, for almost the last year. Why is that moved back there, and why am I streaming on something else in the foreground? Well, the answer is that it's related to today's show title. This is going to be a fairly short stream, and I want to make my point and make it with some brevity. Everything you own should be for sale. Okay? Let's say that one more time for those in the back. Everything you own should be for sale. What does that mean? It means that you should have a price for everything, every possession you've got, that you would part ways with it, even if it's sentimental. Now, obviously, this price can be very high for things you really don't want to get rid of. But, for instance, for my desk, this is something where I want to, it's also wise to evaluate what you have and say, do I want to sell some things? Do I want to downsize? Given that it's likely that I'm going to move out of this apartment, in fact, it's a near certainty at this point, by the end of June, I'm going to ask myself a question of what do I want to not bring with me to the new place? The new place I have, be it a room in a roommate situation or be it a studio, is going to be a smaller apartment, something I'm very happy about. This apartment is too large for me, and not enough people have come out to justify me having an apartment this large. As a result, I am going to downsize. So I'm going to try and sell a few things before I move, because it makes it easier to do the move. Anyone who has been in a military family or known a member of the service understands this. The less shit you have, the easier it is to pack up and find yourself a better opportunity. This is a form of applied capitalism, okay? Go ahead and test here. If you find a better living accommodation for yourself, you should jump to try and make it happen for yourself. If you're a renter, if you are a tenant, you should keep an eye peeled towards the end of your lease and make sure, is this the best situation I want to have for myself, or is there something better? Always look to optimize. This is something a lot of people don't do. A lot of people get dragged into inertia, and they acquire things and acquire things and acquire things, and all of a sudden you're surrounded with clutter that you don't really need. So the black stand in the back and the desk I'm going to try and get rid of between now and the 30th of June. Ideally, I get some money for it. I've already had an offer on the desk. I've had a couple people inquire about the stand, nothing yet. Obviously, it's a mess right now, but that is what it is. The point here is that in doing this, this allows you to use the secondhand market and get a little bit more intimate with it. You can get intimate with the secondhand market. All of a sudden, you can use it for buying and not just selling. What this does is it dramatically drops your expenses. Your spending level goes down, and when your spending level goes down, your freedom levels go up. I've talked about that in many, many other videos. Okay, so where does this leave us? Well, a great example of this is talked about in, you know it, you love it, Early Retirement Extreme. So I wanted to read a little passage to explain just exactly what I'm on about, in a sense, from a guy that retired without ever making more than about 70 grand a year at age 29. Or was it 30? Either way, very early. So one thing that, this is a passage I love. This is a histogram from the book. So if we bring it in, it talks about this graph. It's a histogram that shows the number of possessions that you use versus their usage. So you use almost everything, hopefully, you use almost everything you own at least annually. If you don't, you've got some selling and getting rid of to do. Semi-annually, it's a bit less. Monthly, it's a bit less. Daily, it's a bit less. Hourly, you know, maybe your phone, if that. Hopefully not. But hourly, apart from a small handful of items. So the things you want the things you use more frequently are the ones you should try to keep. If you use this today, you should try to keep it. In the past week, try to keep it. Past month, keep it. 6 months to a year, start thinking about getting rid of it. If it's been more than a year since you used something you owned, get rid of it. If you didn't even know you owned it, I mean, come on, clearly. But he says, if you draw a histogram, it might look like that graph. Don't be surprised if you use fewer than 3% of your total possessions daily, and over 90% of your possessions less than annually. This is a normal consumer pattern, but it's a waste of space and a waste of money. The goal is to bunch the histogram up on the left-hand side so that most possessions are used daily, with fewer possessions used weekly, only a few used monthly, and only a couple of keepsakes that rarely see any use. You know what these sentimental items are. Usually, one's possessions will then fit into 1 or 2 suitcases. Now, this is a fairly aggressive form of minimalism. This should be the goal, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to get there or you fail. Any closer you get to this ideal is a good one. So, let's see here. The other thing you wanted to talk about, and this is what I'd like to touch on too, is be aware that there are hidden costs to acquiring any item. Okay, it's not the cost. The true cost of an item is not the purchase price. The true cost of an item, and I can get my whiteboard to write this out, but I don't think it's necessary here. The true cost of an item is the purchase price minus the resale price plus any maintenance costs plus the value of your time used in maintaining it, buying it, and then selling it, okay? So, for instance, let's say you've bought a car for $10,000. Costs you, over the course of 2 years, $3,000 to fuel and maintain, right? Then it costs you sell it for $6,000, okay? So it's 10,000 plus 3,000 minus 6,000, so that's 7,000. But then you got to factor in all the time, the value of your time it took to continue to operate this thing and to maintain it and to sell it. Let's say it's a total of 100 hours spaced over 3 years, and you value your time at $25 an hour. So that's $2,500 plus 7,000 means your total cost was $9,500 to own this vehicle for 3 years. Those are just example numbers. Massage it to your individual case. Here we go. The process of getting rid of things is as easily accomplished to, oh, here we go. Sorry. So here we go. The process of getting rid of things is most easily accomplished when relocating and things have to come out of the closet, perhaps seeing daylight for the first time in a long time. Plan on relocating to a smaller home. While packing, sort things into moving boxes according to the list above. Put categories 1 to 3, the things you use daily, weekly, and hourly, into a few suitcases. If you need more than that, you're probably cheating. And put the rest in boxes headed to storage. Ideally, you start selling the things that are in storage. It is cheaper to put your excess things in storage, and when you need to use them once a year, right, you pay for the storage and then go to the storage locker, than it is to buy an extra room, which costs a lot of money. You sport extra apartment space. For instance, a studio here might cost you $1,500 a month in rent, whereas a 1-bedroom apartment may cost you $2,000. Most storage lockers do not cost $500 a month, okay? Another example is plan for things that are important to you. For instance, if you like to read, don't have more than a couple books you use very frequently on your possession. Give those books to a library and then go to a library when you would like to do some reading, or check a book out from the library. This way you can use the public library as your library rather than duplicating the books in your home. In fact, one of the strategies I've used is to check whether a book I own is available through the library. If it is, I sell it, swap it, or give it away. If going through this process while staying in the same home, one will find a lot of space liberated. This will make cleaning and maintenance easier. It may also make you question why you live in such a big house that looks so empty. We're going to see what that looks like when I get rid of this desk. Please resist the temptation to fill the house with new stuff. Okay. Another one, selling things, okay? This is what we're talking about. What am I reading? This is Early Retirement Extreme by Jacob Lund-Fisker. Everything I have is for sale, and this is where I learned this trick from. If the value is higher than a small amount of your time, things can be sold. Everything I own is for sale, always. Ask me and I will give you a quote. Not only does this constantly remind me of the value of my possessions, but it prevents me from developing an attachment to the thing in question. A more enlightened state would be to always be willing to give away everything I own. Unfortunately, I'm not sufficiently skillful, nor do I as yet own so little to be easily able to reacquire and recreate everything I own, but that would be something to strive for. This is also some sort of monk mode type stuff. To sell things, I use online services exclusively. Online services like Craigslist are useful for common and generic items like furniture, garden tools, bicycles, toys, etc. Listing is free and the transaction is cash-based and hassle-free. For odd things that can be mailed, online auctions and marketplaces offer a wider audience. Many will offer a number of free listings each month, so take advantage of that. I usually pick a price point near the bottom to ensure a quick sale. Check back frequently to see if anyone is underpricing you. For instance, this desk, again, that has been my little screening operation. It's a solid wood desk from Denmark, actually, that I am looking to sell. I'm offering for $100. I've already got one offer for it, and hopefully I get $100. But I'm not afraid to negotiate or lower the price to get it sold faster. The whole point is to simplify. It's, again, you can quote Walden, right? Thoreau's Walden. Simplify, simplify. It really does come down to that. You need fewer possessions allows you to take advantage of opportunities better. So, again, this also goes into the idea of how one gets housing. So housing is the most expensive thing most people have to buy. There are ways to get it for cheap, even in higher expensive areas like this. Roommates or house hacking is probably the most efficient way. An apartment is less efficient, and a single family home is less efficient still. At least it is here in this high cost of living state. A house may be a much better value or a much better bargain if you live in a place where housing costs are much lower relative to rent costs. This is not the case in Hawaii. For even a $3,500 or $4,000 rental house here costs close to $1 million. This, in general, is not a good rate of return. In other words, if you were to buy $1 million home and rent it out for $4,000, you get $48,000 a year before expenses, which means 4.8% return on your money. That's not very good. Again, before expenses, before things like taxes and insurance, which if you've got $1 million home, you probably don't have that owned outright. And if you do have that owned outright, none of this really applies to you. You can afford to do other things. I'll be right back. Sounds like the pressure in my pressure cooker is starting to rise. So we're just going to turn that off. Making some curry today. I've had a lot of protes recently, so I'm giving myself a break from it. I love protes, and I'd be happy to have some today, but I just felt like making something different. And the timing worked out on this today anyway. So, that's, here we go. Many houses increasingly serve not only as living quarters, but also as storage areas for toy collections, personal libraries, galleries of art, and other assorted knickknacks. Small supermarkets, massive refrigerators, home cinemas, and restaurant-sized kitchens would seem proportional to the size and time the owners spend away from them eating out. Outsource the storage and live in something smaller. For instance, if you live in a very, very high cost of living area, somewhere like, I don't know, New York or San Francisco, it may be more worthwhile to find cheaper housing and forego a kitchen or live with a communal kitchen or shared bathroom and eat out more and cook less. Or cook very simple items that maybe only require an electrical outlet. So you can use things like hot plates and rice cookers. If you do this, all of a sudden, you can bring your cost of housing way down. Yes, you live in a shoebox, but as a result, you can go and afford all sorts of things. For instance, I've considered doing this here. Now, I enjoy cooking, and I really like cooking to good macros, so I'd rather not. But if I did, I would simply, if I wanted to do this, or even live in my van, I could afford, as a result of saving all that money on rent, to eat out basically any time I'd like, wherever I wanted. Even $1,000 a month, right? If you know what you're doing with that, $1,000 a month is what, $35 a day or thereabouts? You should have no problem eating and feeding yourself on $35 a day. In fact, if anything, you should be eating like an absolute king at that level. You should be getting the healthiest food you can and the freshest food you can. We're talking fresh foods and salads and anything you'd like. I would, me personally, probably be eating a lot of poke, for instance, because poke is really, really good for you, and it's also fucking delicious, right? I live in Hawaii. This is obvious. But I'd also balance out some of those costs with a few cheaper meals. The nice thing about Proats, for instance, is I can make Proats at work with mostly storage shelf-stable goods. So, again, could I live without a kitchen? Absolutely. Would I want to? Probably not. I like cooking, but if the economic advantage of not cooking and living in a much smaller location is such that I need to go that route, I would. And again, almost every, even if you just get an individual room, almost every individual room will have enough electrical outlets to have a hot plate and to have a rice cooker, right? Or a pressure cooker. Well, an electric pressure cooker anyway. If it's a conventional stove pressure cooker, that might not work. But an electric pressure cooker is not that expensive to buy, especially if you look for appliances used, which I strongly recommend. Goodwill is excellent for this. Almost everything I have in my kitchen, in fact, I got used. Blender's used. The rice cooker I got for $5 at the Mapuna Puna Goodwill. The pressure cooker I got for $30 off Craigslist, and it's been fantastic. The only thing you have to do with the pressure cooker is, keep the gasket in good shape and you're good. As for everything else, I got to use dishwasher, but I could very easily sell that, minimize the number of pots and pans I had, and just hand wash it. Part of me is thinking about doing that, but dishwashers are convenient, and what I really like about them is that they sterilize things. It uses hot enough water to where it kills any bacteria. Getting hot enough water to do that with my hands, hand washing things, just kind of sucks because I don't like burning my hands. But I could also go and get some gloves with which to wash dishes, latex gloves or something like that. So plenty of ways that all can be achieved. Speaking of, that's really all I had for this stream. I've got a whole lot more that I could talk about, but I wanted to keep this pretty simple. I'm going to probably get off, make the curry so that it's simmering, and then come back on and play some Pokemon. Other things I've got to do today, I've got to make another film for Supranational. It's been a lot of extracurriculars to do this pageant. I hope most pageants don't require this much of my time. Not that I haven't enjoyed it. To an extent I have, but it's just a lot. And then this afternoon, actually at noon, I am going over to find I'm going over to take a look at another rental house, or rather a room in a rental house. If I get this, it would drop my rent by over $1,000 a month. And $1,000 a month is roughly $12,000 a year, which requires almost $300,000 to $400,000 to replicate in terms of invested income. So dropping that much off of my expenses would be a very good thing to do. Not to mention it's actually closer to where I work, which means it would make life a little bit easier. On top of that, my boss has been talking to me about wanting me to come in earlier, which would disrupt my current lifting schedule. And if that's the case, well, I probably need to take a good hard look at maybe changing that up. I've talked to him, and it sounds to me like he would be willing to let me lift over lunch hour or kind of do flexible scheduling. So I'd come in early, 6:30, whenever, and leave a little bit later, 4:30 or 5, but I'd have a good hour or two somewhere in the middle of my day to lift, or as my schedule sees fit, which I would be very happy to have. That's sort of how I did things at my old job in South Carolina anyway, and it worked out pretty well. So, especially because that would allow me to shower midday, which I'd be fine with. So yeah, there's some pros to this much simpler living. And this tracks with previous years. This is the last thing I'll say because I'm starting to go on a bit. But this tracks with previous years where, right, so I've just, as of yesterday, I have lived here for exactly 1 year. I have seen what my spending is for this year, and there are some aberrations to adjust for, but like it was for my first year in South Carolina and my first year for Texas, my costs were elevated. Typically speaking, my costs come down in the second year anywhere I live because I know the place a little bit more, and I've optimized a little bit. I've got things down to a science. So that's probably going to be coming up this year. Anyway, that is all I have for y'all for this stream. I'll be back in probably maybe 20 minutes or so. We'll play a little bit of Pokemon, and then probably not for more than an hour or so because I'll have to shower off, eat, and then get ready to go about my day. All right, so that's going to be it for me for now. I will be back in a little while. As always, make good decisions. Those good decisions form your actions, which form your habits, which form your values, form ethos. That can be the guide to start through the rough waters of life. Much love. Come in for the hug. Shoot.